While it would be great if all of our fantasy players just stayed healthy and lived up to expectations, that's not always the way it goes, and sometimes you got to dig a little deep and make some start-sit decisions that may be a bit uncomfortable. I'm going to give you some guys that I think can come through here in week 4 if you're desperate. Before I get to those guys, I got to remind you, if you haven't tried Underdog Fantasy yet, now is the time. Go there, use promo code ENDGAME. Not only are they going to match your deposit dollar for dollar up to $500. That's right, for a limited time between now and October 4th, they will match your deposit dollar for dollar up to $500, $500 free dollars in your pocket. But also they're going to give you this new customer Kenny Pickett line higher than half a yard. Take that line, pair it with any other line you like. You can potentially triple your entry. Use their money to do it, by the way. And hey, if you're not a fan of the fantasy football team you drafted and you want to draft a brand new team, they also have the Best Ball Resurrection going on right now. $10 entry, and you can use the money they give you to enter that tournament. Underdog is fantastic. Go to underdogfantasy.com, use that promo code ENDGAME, get the deposit match dollar for dollar up to $500. Start doing some more drafts and have fun every week of fantasy football. Let's start at running back, and I'm going to suggest if you have given up on Khalil Herbert, you maybe give him a look this week because, first of all, the matchup, right? The Broncos. We just saw what this Miami Dolphins running game did to this Broncos defense. But also look at 2 weeks ago when the Commanders played this Broncos. Brian Robinson had 87 yards and 2 touchdowns. It's starting to feel like maybe this Broncos run defense is just really bad. And it's easy to look at this Bears backfield and say, well, isn't Herbert splitting with Rashawn? They're getting almost the same amount of touches. And sure, if you just look at it on a per game basis, they are. But when you look deeper, you realize that Herbert technically is the lead back here. He's just getting game scripted out every single game. This year, when the Bears are within a touchdown of their opponent, meaning they're losing by 7 or less, Khalil Herbert has had 70% of the snaps and 70% of the opportunities. The problem is, they're never within 7 points of their opponents. They're getting blown out every single week, and so he's pretty much getting game scripted out, and Rashawn Johnson is in there for pass catching and pass protection. But this might be the week where he actually doesn't get game scripted out, because even though this Bears offense is terrible, it's the Broncos. They might actually be able to score some points this week and keep this game close. And if they do, that means we're probably going to see more Herbert than Rashawn Johnson. And more Herbert in this matchup should lead to plenty of fantasy points. Obviously, there is the risk here that the Bears do somehow get blown out by this Broncos team. And then Khalil Herbert is once again game scripted out. But even then, he'll have enough chances here against a terrible defense. I think Khalil Herbert can come through this week, and if the Bears can somehow keep it close, Khalil Herbert could potentially have a big game in week 4. Now for a rookie that I talked up all offseason, I've been telling people to stash, and I think this might be the week you can consider starting him. That is Zach Charbonnet of the Seattle Seahawks. Hasn't done a whole lot this year, but he's starting to creep up in snaps. He's had his snaps go up every week of the season, and last week played almost 50% of the snaps, playing 44% of the snaps. And it wasn't like he was only in there in garbage time. This was a close game, a competitive game. There were many stretches, even in the first half, where Zach Charbonnet was playing multiple snaps in a row with Kenneth Walker on the sideline. Now, I'm not saying Zach Charbonnet is ready to take over Kenneth Walker's role just yet. But I think if he can get close to that 50% snap mark again this week in this matchup, that's all he'll need because it's the Giants and they are terrible on defense. They're currently allowing the 6th most points to running backs, and Zach Charbonnet has been good. He averaged over 5 yards per carry last week. He's averaging almost 5 yards per carry for the season. And even though he's played significantly less snaps than Kenneth Walker, he's ran almost as many routes. He's going to be involved as a pass catcher, so he's going to give you some value in your PPR leagues. He's also had 5 opportunities in the red zone, so he has a chance to score. In this matchup this week against the Giants, I think he puts up decent numbers, has a chance to score. So if you're looking for a running back in a deeper league, take a look at Zach Charbonnet. Now let's go to wide receiver, and I think we got to start considering Tutu Atwell, not necessarily an every week start, but a guy you could potentially start every week, at least until Cooper Kupp comes back. He's had 8 or more targets in every game, he's had at least 50 yards in every game, and he's scored a touchdown in each of the last 2 games. This is a team that's extremely pass heavy. There's going to be opportunities here, and they get a Colts defense that is allowing the 6th most fantasy points to wide receivers on the season, so nothing to be scared about in this matchup. Tutu Atwell is one of those guys that has big play potential every time he's on the field. He can always score touchdowns. He's in a great passing offense, and he's playing well. I know Puka Mania is sweeping the fantasy football landscape right now, but don't sleep on Tutu Atwell. I think he has very good value this week. I would happily am starting him as a wide receiver 3 and flex in multiple leagues this week. I think he's going to come through. And then while everyone can't wait to start Adam Thielen this week like it's 2019, don't sleep on DJ Chark. He had 11 targets in week 3, and yeah, sure, he only caught 4 for 86 yards and a touchdown, but that's actually why I like DJ Chark even more than Adam Thielen this week, because he doesn't need 7 or 8 catches to pay off. This is a guy at any moment can hit a huge play, a huge touchdown, and we saw that last week. And now he gets an absolutely juicy matchup against the Vikings, who have been awful against the pass and wide receivers. This is a defense that can be exploited. Now, if there's a worry here, it's Bryce Young, because Bryce Young has practiced fully all week. It looks like he's going to be back out there. And this passing attack just hasn't been the same with Bryce Young versus what we saw last week with Andy Dalton, who was out there just chucking it, not a care in the world. Bryce Young's being more careful. He's a rookie. He's going to make more mistakes. But like I said, DJ Chark is one of these guys that 1-2 catches is all he really needs, because one of them could be a home run for a touchdown. So if you're looking for upside in your wide receiver 3 or flex position and your other options just don't look exciting, go ahead and take a look at DJ Chark. He at least has upside this week in this matchup. Let's move on to QB, and is it fair to call Russell Wilson a sneaky start? I think it probably is. I don't think most people are starting him, but look, Russell Wilson has actually been pretty good this year. He's thrown for over 300 yards each of the last 2 games. He has 6 touchdowns on the season, and because that defense is bad, like I talked about earlier, he's being asked to throw the ball a lot. And now he gets an absolutely fantastic matchup against the Bears. This is a defense that has allowed at least 25 points in 13 straight games going back to last year. They rank last in almost every category. They don't get any pressure on the quarterback. Russell Wilson is going to be able to stand in the pocket, wait for guys to get open, and hit them. And he's got weapons this year. Cortland Sutton looking pretty good. Jerry Jeudy hopefully will be more healthy. Marvin Mims a home run potential every single snap. I think Russell Wilson has tremendous upside in this matchup against the Bears. It wouldn't even surprise me if Russell Wilson finished as a top 12 quarterback. In fact, I'm going to go stronger than that. I'm going to say I think Russell Wilson finishes as a top 10 quarterback in week 4. Now, I really hate ever suggesting Daniel Jones as a streaming option, because he can always just leave you devastated when you get nothing from the quarterback position, but the matchup this week is too good to ignore. Seattle is allowing the 8th most points to quarterbacks and just allowed 361 yards and 2 touchdowns to Andy Dalton. And if that's not enough, the Seahawks also struggle against the run, and Daniel Jones runs a lot. So this could be a game where he actually throws for decent yards and touchdowns and runs for a lot of yards. It also helps that he's at home this week in a matchup where the Seahawks will probably be able to put points up against this bad Giants defense, meaning he's going to have to continue to throw and run the football. And chances are Saquon Barkley isn't going to be out there, so Daniel Jones will have to be the whole offense. And unlike last week, when he looked like deer in headlights against the 49ers, this matchup, he won't have to worry about that. Look, I don't love Daniel Jones. I don't ever love Daniel Jones. But in a super flex or a 2 QB league, or if you're in a very deep league and you're desperate at quarterback, I think Daniel Jones can come through with a nice game. All right, moving on to tight end, and it's hard to really get excited about the Commanders' offense right now, but if there is one guy to maybe get excited about, it's Logan Thomas, the tight end. He currently ranks 2nd on the team in red zone targets despite missing a game and a half. In week 1, when he actually played the full game, he had 8 targets. In week 2, he had 3 targets and a touchdown before leaving the game in the second quarter with a concussion. Pretty much, he's been one of the lone bright spots on this team. All signs are pointing to him being back this week after missing last week with a concussion, and he gets a matchup against the Eagles defense that, even after shutting down Cade Otton last week, still has allowing the most points to tight ends on the season. He may be the lone bright spot on this offense this week. If you're desperate at tight end, which a lot of us are, if nothing else, he at least has touchdown upside. That's pretty much the most you can ask for when you're streaming tight end. So look for Logan Thomas on your waiver wire. He's probably just sitting out there, especially since he didn't play last week. Then, even though Donald Parham got all the touchdowns last week, I still think Gerald Everett is a great play at tight end in week 4. And even though he didn't score last week, he had 6 catches for 30 yards on 6 targets, despite only playing 58% of the snaps. And we've seen in the past, when either Mike Williams and or Keenan Allen are out, Gerald Everett gets a bump. And it may surprise you to learn that Gerald Everett currently ranks 8th among all tight ends in receptions and 11th in yards. So he's actually been fairly involved, even with the healthy Mike Williams. And it doesn't hurt that he gets this great matchup against a terrible Raiders defense. This could be the week where not only does he see a bump in his yards and receptions, but he might even get in the end zone too. He certainly presents a nice floor in PPR leagues with decent upside. So if Gerald Everett is still sitting on your waiver wire and you are terrified of your tight end, go pick him up. he's at least worth a shot. Those are some sneaky starts in week 4, but what about everything else? Your start sit, guys that could go off, some trades. We got you covered. Check out our week 4 playlist right here.